2, 1. Welcome to Actionable Intelligence. I'm Eric Greitens, and it is great to be with you tonight. We've got a big show lined up for you, so let's get after it. You know, for most Americans, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax is in the rearview mirror as they walk into the voting booth. And of course, it's been nearly 9 months since the President of the United States, for only the third time in American history, was impeached by a Democrat Congress. That, too, has been long forgotten by most Americans. After all, 2020 has been a wild year, marked by months of and lawlessness, a worldwide pandemic, the closure of businesses, the forced closure of churches, the political suppression of basic American freedoms, big tech censorship, and now a hotly contested presidential election. But on the eve of another election, it's important to remember the forces on the left and in the swamp and in the mainstream media who tried to overturn your vote and how they did it. Remember that the basis of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax was the accusation that President Trump worked with the Russians to beat Hillary Clinton. We now know, of course, that this was a hoax. It was a deliberately fabricated lie. And we now know that it was started by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Take a listen.
It was basically our working theory that the Clinton campaign had devised these sick fantasies to cover up for her 33,000 emails that she deleted, and she probably thought that the Russians or some nefarious actor had those and could dump them. There was probably a lot of damaging information. The Clinton campaign would clearly be communicating with the mainstream media throughout 2016, and they continued to have these stories about Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia. Then fast forward to the fall of 16, and serious criminal leaks out of how the FBI had opened an investigation into Trump, and the famous October 31st, I call it the Halloween story, right, comes out. Clearly that was a massive leaks of classified information. So it becomes clear that Steele's not the author of these dossiers. They were trying to tie Trump to these nefarious Russian figures with these proto-dossiers. So we knew that was the case. We knew this is what the Clinton campaign was playing, an October surprise, dirty trick, tie Trump, whatever we're doing, which is, playing games with Russians, like what Hunter Biden was doing, getting $3.5 million from a Russian oligarch in Moscow. So accused Trump of doing the same thing. That's what they did. It's the old left-wing playbook.
And what you heard there is what every investigation found. It's what the FBI found. And, the president was fully exonerated. How do you know? Because the mainstream media stopped talking about it. But as soon as the Trump-Russia collusion hoax collapsed, what happened? The Democrats in the House went to the president and impeached him over Ukraine. Well, none of that stuck either. But what is of interest to many Americans is the clear and convincing testimony of the Biden family's business partners, Hunter Biden's emails and text messages, and the growing clear evidence that the Biden family made millions of dollars, all coming from foreign sources, while Joe Biden served in the Obama administration. Now, when you look back at this, it's clear that the media failed the American people. They put up wall-to-wall coverage night after night. They talked about Russia and then impeachment. Do you remember this?
Breaking news.
Bombshell.
Today is a turning point. Today was historically bad for President Trump.
Today, turning point.
A turning point.
We're at a turning point here.
The beginning of the end for the Trump presidency.
Another bombshell.
Mike Pence might have to assume the office of the presidency.
Rumblings of the word impeachment.
Breaking news.
Another bombshell out of the White House.
I believe this is the beginning of the end.
I do too.
It's really the beginning of the end.
He may be feeling the walls closing in on him.
All the walls closing in on him.
The walls closing in on him.
Breaking news, a new bombshell.
One astrologer says this means the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump.
Trump will resign.
Trump is going to resign.
Is this the tipping point? Over and over.
You think this is a tipping point?
And over and over.
This is a tipping point.
And over and over.
Breaking news, President Trump off the rails.
It was the beginning of the end today.
It's the beginning of the end.
News tonight, new bombshell.
This is the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
The walls are closing in.
The wall's closing in.
The wall's closing in.
Breaking overnight bombshell.
And I think it might be near a tipping point. You think this is a tipping point? December 1st, 2017, you can mark it down. This is the day that everything changed. The beginning of the end?
Beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
The beginning of the... We begin tonight with the bombshell.
Donald Trump is in a lot of trouble.
Trump is in trouble.
The president will resign.
Another hour, another bombshell.
This is a tipping point.
Trump's going down.
This president could be impeached.
Resignation. I don't think this president is going to serve out his term. Mr. Trump will not serve out his term. He will not serve out his term.
It's over.
The wall's closing.
The wall's closing in. It's going to be the Achilles heel.
Breaking news tonight. I expect Trump to depart.
This week will be the watershed week.
Trump is in big trouble.
Trump's in a lot of trouble.
It's a sign of a terrified old man who feels the
Walls
Closing in.
The wall
increasingly
Closing in on him.
tonight. The walls
are closing in.
Today changed everything.
This is the beginning of the end.
Today, the biggest
tipping point for the Trump administration.
What a historic day. The bombshells.
He's underwater. He feels
The walls closing in.
Turning point.
We may be at a tipping point.
It's the beginning of
The end.
The beginning
of the end.
Bombshell.
Bombshell. Bombshell. Bombshell.
Bombshell.
This is a bombshell.
Now, one of the results of that mainstream media hysteria is the media have destroyed their credibility. The people don't trust them now. And not just on political topics, but on anything. A few months ago, Gallup released a study that found that the media ranks dead last on public trust. Beneath Congress, beneath the president, beneath your state government, they rank dead last. Now, here on Actionable Intelligence, we work to cut through the noise to bring you the truth. We work to bring you the hard facts. And joining us tonight to break it all down are two people who've been following this from the very beginning. Victoria Tenzing, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President Reagan, and Joe DeGenova, a former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Guys, it's great to have you on with us.
Eric, I just can't resist saying there was one of those guys who is serving out his term, Michael Avenatti, in prison.
And Chris Matthews resigned in disgrace. Wow.
Yeah.
And Trump's still standing.
And Trump's still standing. Now, for our viewers, we're going to have some time in this segment and the next, but let's begin. One of the things that both of you have pointed out, you've been following this for a long time, is that this story really begins with the Obama administration spying illegally on Americans. Take us there and help to explain that to our audience.
Yes, the Obama DOJ, FBI, and CIA were illegally spying on Americans since at least 2014. And how do we know that? Because there was one spy agency that didn't go along with it, and that was the NSA. Mike Rogers, who is the hero of this piece, went to the FISA court and said, something's wrong here. There's private contractors getting information, and I don't know what's going on. And the FISA court looked into it and wrote a scathing opinion criticizing the Obama administration and cutting off these private contractors. And do you know what happened within a few weeks of that? The DNC and Hillary Rodham Clinton hired Fusion GPS, who in turn hired the former British spy, Christopher Steele, to get information from foreigners to make dirt on President Trump. And that's how the whole thing started.
So in just about the minute that we have left in this segment, and again, we'll follow through just after the break. But so what Americans should understand is that the Obama administration was spying on Americans, and then that illegally spying on Americans, and then that spying came to an end. After that, that's when the Clinton campaign turns and begins their work to dig up dirt on President Trump and begin the Russia collusion hoax. Is that right, Joe?
What they tried, exactly. Once they could no longer get the illegal material from the NSA databases, when the FBI contractors were cut off, that's when they decided, okay, let's get FISA warrants on members of the Trump campaign. And that's where the Carter Page FISA warrant started, since they couldn't get it any other way.
Beautiful. Folks, you're going to want to stay with us. Victoria and Joe have been following this story from the beginning. We're going to break it all down with them right after the break. Stay right with us. Welcome back to Actionable Intelligence. We're here with Victoria Tenzing and Joe DeGenova, who are breaking down for us the beginnings of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. So guys, you were explaining how it was actually the Clinton campaign who paid for and began disseminating the information that started the whole Trump-Russia collusion hoax. Break that down for our audience, if you would, please.
Well, in other words, the Clinton people colluded with persons from Russia to frame Donald Trump. But they couldn't get anyone to print this dossier or to publish it, so they concocted a plan. James Comey would brief the president about the dossier, and then certain media were told, hey, the president was briefed on it, so that way that was a leg to print the story about the dossier and all the dirt that was in it.
And Joe, we now have evidence that this was actually the Clinton campaign paid for this and actually went out and got people to manufacture this fake set of information, rumor, and innuendo. Is that right?
That's correct. The Clinton campaign hired the law firm Perkins Coie in Washington, D.C., who hired Fusion GPS, who then hired Nellie Orr, who was the wife of Bruce Orr, a senior Justice Department official. They then hired Christopher Steele, who worked as a former MI6 intelligence officer for the UK. Right. He allegedly knew a lot about the Russians. He went out and got a bunch of blather information from bars and places, none of which was verifiable, none of which has ever been verified by anybody, and created 18 memorandums which contained nothing but falsehood about the president or about candidate Trump and then President Trump.
Yeah, so again, just to break this down for the audience, you've got the Clinton campaign paying for dirt to be written about then candidate Trump, and that information then becomes the very basis for what becomes the whole Trump-Russia collusion hoax.
That's exactly right.
And not one member of the mainstream media had a problem about publishing this and talking about it and making the accusations. Not a one.
Well, and one of the things that was striking, it's one of the reasons why we played that earlier video, is that this was constant. And a lot of our viewers will remember for years, you heard it from CNN, from MSNBC, it was in the Washington Post, and they were hitting this Trump-Russia collusion story day after day after day. And the fact is that the FBI themselves concluded at the end of all of this that there was no evidence. The president was exonerated. But then, right after that, the Democratic-controlled House then turns to impeach the president over Ukraine. Talk with the audience a little bit about that move.
Well, that involved a plant inside the White House by the name of Eric Ciaramella and Colonel Vindman of somebody else on the National Security Council, both of them. And what they did was they claimed that one of them heard something on the phone call that sounded like something that should not occur between a president and the leader of a foreign country. Mm-hmm. Well, the transcript of the phone call revealed that the phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky was perfectly proper and didn't involve anything untoward. But the game was afoot at that point. And the plant from the CIA, Eric Ciaramella, who knew nothing about the call, had been informed about it by Vindman and others, made the complaint, was the whistleblower, and then we had an impeachment based on a false story.
And it was based on a statute that didn't even apply to the President of the United States. It really had to do with if there was mischief in something that was going on in the intelligence community. The President of the United States is not a member of the intelligence community.
He just runs it.
And then
out of whole cloth. But we learned then, didn't we, Eric, to believe anybody who was in the military.
Right.
Like Tony Bobulinski? Oh, no, just Colonel Vin.
Well, you know, one of the things that was striking is I remember reading, and in fact, I think a lot of Americans actually went out when they had the opportunity to, and they actually read the transcript of that phone call, and they said, as you said, like, there's nothing here. This is the basis for an impeachment hearing of the President of the United States. It was just clearly a Democratic Congress that was really running out of control. Now, one of the things that has happened, though, is that we've had, unlike the Russia collusion hoax, there's very clear evidence about Hunter Biden, Vice President Biden's son, profiting, the Biden family profiting while Vice President Biden was serving in the Obama administration and getting paid from foreign sources, especially in the Ukraine. Give us your take on that.
Well, what we know is that from the time that Joe Biden was a senator through his tenure as vice president of the United States, he ran a pay-to-play operation with his family. He would set up meetings with individuals in foreign governments and foreign corporations, and the family would then conduct business with those people and receive huge sums of money, sums of which would then be funneled, laundered through the family, usually Hunter Biden as the chief launderer of the money, and he would then distribute it to members of the family, including Joe Biden. And the mainstream media has refused to deal with this story because they don't like the president and they want Joe Biden to be president. But this was a clear pay-to-play money laundering scheme that went on for years. The evidence now is overwhelming that there needs to be a federal grand jury investigation of this conduct.
And we don't have to go any further than just knowing for sure what's admitted, that Hunter Biden sat on the board of Burisma a few weeks. He got this job, this position, just a few weeks after, number one, his father was put in charge of Ukraine, and Burisma's a Ukraine company, and just a few weeks after he was kicked out of the military for drug usage, and he was being paid $83,000 a month to have a position about an industry, the energy industry, that he knew nothing about and couldn't speak Russian or Ukrainian. So that in and of itself is just so mind-boggling and such just a conflict of interest. And forget, that it was improper and illegal. That you can't even get by that. And the mainstream media is just sort of, nothing to see here for $83,000 a month.
I mean, one of the things that's striking is that you ask the average American, you say, look, the vice president's son admitted he knew nothing about Ukraine. He admitted that he knew nothing about the gas industry, and yet he and his partners are raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars while Vice President Biden is in office. It's obviously suspect, but one of the things that I wanted to get your comments on, Victoria, you just touched on it, was how the mainstream media has refused to cover this story. We've actually seen censorship from Facebook and Twitter not allowing people to actually go out and actively promote these facts. Compare that, if you would, with what we saw in the Russia collusion hoax.
Well, here we have a first-hand witness, somebody who said, I was there and this is what happened. And Joe Biden's lying about never talking with his son about business. A first-hand witness. The media never had one witness, one document, one piece of evidence whatsoever about the Russian hoax, and yet they ran with it. And on this one, they're quieting it down. Somebody says that the biggest sin of the media is what they omit as opposed to what they say.
And the other thing is, there is an actual laptop that belonged to Hunter Biden, which contains thousands of emails and text, and unfortunately, some films and photographs, which are crimes in and of themselves, according to what we're told, that categorically established that Hunter Biden was the bag man for the family, and more specifically for Joe Biden. And the mainstream media simply doesn't want to touch that because they want Biden to be president.
And even Fox Business News, the one that goes by Kennedy, went after Rudy Giuliani and said, well, you're just acting like Christopher Steele. I mean, how embarrassing for somebody to be so unsophisticated and make such an ingenuous remark about somebody who's been a hero and a prosecutor and the New York mayor, the mayor of the country. Yeah. How insulting.
Yeah, and talk with you, Cam. We just in 20 seconds left. Do you think that this story is going to crack through and affect the election? Do you think that it's really helping people to see the possible corruption?
I think it already has. Notwithstanding the efforts of Facebook and Twitter, the story has broken through on the media. People have amazing ways to use social media to communicate. Yes. It's out there.
Well, guys, thank you very much, folks. It's Victoria Tenzing and Joe DeGenova, always insightful. Stick around after the break. We're going to talk about some of President Trump's accomplishments with Breitbart entertainment editor Jerome Hudson. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Actionable Intelligence. I'm Eric Greitens. Now, since day one of the Trump administration, the president made it his goal to strengthen the American economy. And 4 years later, the results are in, and a lot of them are pretty striking. When you take a look at the manufacturing industry here in America, that's where you start to see the proof. Since December of 2017, the Trump administration has overseen the addition of over 460,000 manufacturing jobs. To put that in context, that's more than 6 times the amount added in Obama's last 2 years in office. Now, that's just one of many facts that are covered in a great new book called 50 Things They Don't Want You to Know About President Trump. And thankfully, today we're joined by the author, Jerome Hudson. Jerome, pleasure to have you on with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Jerome, 50 Things. Let us know, what was the first chapter that you wrote?
Yeah, I talked about how Democrats and the political media were actually fantasizing about the impeachment of Donald Trump. In March of 2016, New York Daily News ran the headline, "Impeach Trump." It was just 6 words in the article. It's not too early to start. Well, it was by 10 months because he wasn't inaugurated until January 2017. March of 2016, when that headline ran, Donald Trump wasn't even the Republican nominee for president. It just allowed me to sort of set the landscape for the type of media that President Trump inherited. If you knew that the political press was already fantasizing about his impeachment, and of course they weren't actually caring about reporting his accomplishments.
Now, one of the things that you also touch on, Jerome, which I think is really important, is you touch on how blue-collar families benefited under President Trump as compared to the richest 1% in the country. Talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're talking about the top 1% of households. Blue collar wages rose 3 times as much under this president. You're talking about the bottom 25% of wage earners. That represents 82% of the population. They saw their wages rise by 4.5% under President Trump between November 18 and November 2019. You'd have to go, Eric, all the way back to July of 2008 to see that type of growth. It was something that all the smartest people in the world predicted, that the economy would collapse should President Trump win the election, and the exact opposite happened.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is powerful about your book, Jerome, is that you also talk about the fact that this is kind of broad-based and diverse prosperity across America. And you've got some powerful statistics about women-owned businesses as well.
Sure. The businesses that were started by women in 2018 and 2019 hit a historic high. What's interesting about that, Eric, is that in 2018, Black women represented 42% of all net new businesses opened per day. What's interesting about that, obviously, Black women supported President Donald Trump's candidacy the least of any group in the country. But the good news is, the irony is that they benefited the most from his economic policies.
Right. And also, and the effect of this was broadly distributed. I mean, you've got also some compelling stats in there about median household income and how that also changed under the Trump presidency.
Yeah, actually, the figures that I had at the time of writing were actually a little bit lower. The numbers that the Federal Reserve put out just last month, median household income hitting a record high. I mean, just the president blowing out his 2018 records, $68,700 median income, household income in 2019. Again, you even had Willard Mitt Romney joining Paul Krugman, saying that there's no way that the president would actually be able to expand the economy. And time again, he proved the naysayers wrong.
Well, he's certainly proven wrong on a lot of different fronts. And, one thing that's obviously gotten a lot of attention recently was Amy Coney Barrett becoming another Supreme Court justice. And in the book, you actually write about Trump's impact on the judiciary.
It's going to be sweeping and lasting for generations. I mean, if you think about it, a third of the sitting justices on the Supreme Court are President Trump's nominees. The left likes to castigate him as a hater of women. 1/3 of his nominees is actually a woman in Justice Barrett. And she actually rose, Eric, out of the circuit court ranks, which a lot of experts say the policy is important. This president, and with the help of Senator Mitch McConnell, filling the seats of a record number of the circuit court justices. You'd have to go back 40 years to the Reagan administration to see these kinds of gains.
Great. And hey, and finally, Jerome, if I could get you to comment briefly, one of the things that Joe Biden said in the last presidential debate was that he wanted to transition away from oil. In fact, under Trump, America became a net exporter of natural gas and crude oil for the first time in more than 50 years. You write about that in the book. Put that in some historical context for us, if you could, briefly.
Yeah, you'd have to go all the way back to 1959 on the natural gas number and 1949 on the crude oil number. It didn't happen under the Obama-Biden administration. It happened right after President Trump's tax cuts and regulations.
Jerome, I think we're going to have to, we're going to have to cut it there. But folks, it's Jerome Hudson, 50 Things They Don't Want You to Know About President Trump. Make sure to stay right with us. After this, we're going to be here with Pastor Daryl Scott, and then we'll take you to the Trump rally. Stay right with us. Welcome back to Actionable Intelligence. I'm Eric Greitens, and I'm really happy to welcome our special guest, Pastor Darrell Scott. Pastor Scott was one of the first African-American pastors to support President Trump in 2016. And he was a key figure in leading other African-American pastors to attend meetings at Trump Tower with then-candidate Donald Trump. He's the author of a new book, Nothing to Lose, Unlikely Allies in the Struggle for a Better Black America. Pastor Scott, really great to have you on with us. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, man. It's always my pleasure.
Hey, my pleasure. So talk with us a little bit, Pastor Scott, about President Trump's achievements on behalf of African Americans. This was a big issue that came up in the last debate.
You know, I like to say now in retrospect, looking at Donald Trump since he first announced his candidacy until now, and I'll say this much regarding his interaction with the black community. He underpromised and overperformed. He made a statement, which is where I got the title for my book from, when he said, "What do you have to lose by voting for me?" Because during the 2016 campaign, we had the black community in a collective uproar over the condition that it was in, that we were in. And, Donald Trump was saying, well, if the condition is that bad after 8 years of a black president, what do you have to lose by voting for me? If you guys are saying it's this bad, how much bad can he get? So he underpromised, but he overperformed. And you know what I like? His initiatives were not the result of fulfilled campaign promises. They caught everybody out of the blue. They were amazing and surprising at the same time. Bam, criminal justice reform. Bam, prison reform. Bam, urban revitalization initiatives. Bam, opportunity zones. Then he did some ceremonial initiatives, such as designating Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthplace as a national landmark, pardoning the first black heavyweight champion posthumously in Jack Johnson. Then he comes right back again. Boom, now we have the opportunity zones and the platinum plan. He's just been doing it again and again and again and again and again. He's closing his detractors' mouths. He's doing a great job when other people are trying to take credit for it. Then you had historic low levels of unemployment in the African-American community. You saw him do historic levels of funding for HBCUs. These are things that our prior president could have done but didn't do. But this president, like I said, he underpromised, he overdelivered. He's been the most proactive president regarding the black community that I know of in my lifetime. And it's a very, very pleasant surprise.
It's a long history of achievements. And for all of our viewers, HBCUs are historically black colleges and universities. The president has had a lot of presidents of those historically black colleges and universities with him in the Oval Office, and he's made some really historic strides there. Now, Pastor, one of the things that you've always done, which I really appreciate, is you always kind of step back and take a wider historical view. Try and, if you can, for our viewers, put what you believe to be President Trump's achievements in the context of history as you look back over other presidents in the past generation.
Well, I was born in Eisenhower's administration, so Donald Trump is the 12th president that I've lived under. And to me, once again, he's been the most proactive president regarding the black community. And the reason I say that is this. When I say proactive, I'm saying that his initiatives were not birthed out of social unrest, political pressure. We had Lyndon Johnson, who reluctantly signed the Civil Rights Bill, but it was the result of political pressure and social upheaval, social unrest. But you see, President Trump's initiatives were not the result of that. They were proactive rather than reactive. So in that particular context, I would say that he's been more favorable toward the black community than any other president since the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, Pastor, ever since we gained citizenship status, he's been more proactive towards the black community than any other president that I can think of.
Very good. And now a lot of people disagree with that. One of them is Vice President Biden. I want to play a little clip for you and get your reaction to what Vice President Biden says right here.
America was an idea. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We've never lived up to it, but we've never walked away from it before. And I just think we have to be more honest and let our kids know as we raise them what actually did happen. Acknowledge our mistakes so we don't repeat.
So Pastor Scott, what's your reaction to Vice President Biden being critical of the president's record, especially with African Americans?
Joe Biden needs to shut up about anybody's record concerning African Americans. You know, he's been one of the main antagonists towards the black community throughout his Senate career, going back decades. You know, here's a guy, you know, when they asked President Trump about disavowing white supremacy, Joe Biden is the one they need to talk to, because he had known friendships and associations with high-ranking members of the Ku Klux Klan and noted segregationists. You're talking about a guy who said he didn't want his children to grow up in a racial jungle with blacks. You're talking about a guy that was the architect of that crime bill that disproportionately incarcerated black men and decimated the black community and the family structure of the black community. You know, it just goes back decades with him. It goes back weeks and months with him. He said the reason he was able to survive in the basement was because of the black women that stocked the shelf. He said, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. He has a long history of antagonism towards the black community. He called us predators that need to be taken off the streets. Conversely, with Donald Trump, they painted this nightmare scenario back in 2016. Oh, my God. If Trump is elected, we're going to be, slavery is coming back. We're going back into slavery. We're going to all be shipped back to Africa. But the black community, the lives of the members of the black community have been enhanced because of Donald Trump's presidency. It hasn't been harmed in any way, form, or fashion. And so I say that to my fellow members of the black community. Your life is better under a Donald Trump presidency than it was under a Barack Obama presidency. And it's not going to get worse. It's going to get even better if we continue with the initiatives that he's endeavoring to advance right now. But Joe Biden is a big hypocrite. Flip-flop Joe. He flip-flops on everything. He'll sit there and say something one day and the next day say he never said it. Maybe he doesn't remember that he said it, but it's on tape, Joe. We got you on record.
No, Pastor Scott, very briefly, we've only got about 20 seconds left. I have to guess and imagine that for you, right, you are always a lightning rod for criticism because you've been willing to courageously stand up, talk about what you believe and what you believe is best for the African-American community. Talk a little bit about how you've survived those attacks from the mainstream media and others.
But you know what? Most of my attacks came from the black community. And as a result of President Trump's positive initiatives, the attacks have less. I rarely get them anymore. I don't get the derogatory racial slurs that I used to wake up to every day. I don't get the different things, the names that they were calling me because of the positive achievements of President Trump.
Well,
in
Pastor
2016,
Scott,
I pointed forward. In 2020, I can point backward.
Awesome. Folks, the book is Nothing to Lose, Unlikely Allies in the Struggle for a Better Black America. Stay right with us. Welcome back to Actionable Intelligence. There's just a few days left before the 2020 election comes to a close, and President Trump has been making campaign stops in key battleground states. Right now, the president is speaking in Goodyear, Arizona. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
That's a lot of people. Thank you very much. Wow, thank you very much. And hello, Goodyear. Hello, Phoenix. 6 days, can you believe this? 6 days from now, we are going to win Arizona, and we are going to win 4 more years in our great, beautiful White House. A vote for me is a vote for massive tax cuts, regulation cuts, fair trade, strong borders. Our Second Amendment, we will save our Second Amendment. And American energy independence. It's a vote to support our police, our military, stand up to China, which we've been doing. They gave $28 billion to our farmers. That's very nice. Thank you very much, China. And ensure more products that are proudly stamped with that beautiful phrase, made in the USA. We will deliver record prosperity, epic job growth, and a safe vaccine that eradicates the virus. The China plague is what it is, and quickly ends the pandemic. Normal life, which is what we want. We just want normal life, like we had 7 months ago. We'll fully resume, and next year we will be the greatest economic power. We are going to be stronger than we've ever been before, and you see that all happening. Next year will be the best economic year in our country's history, and last year was, and then we were interrupted. We were interrupted. Called Make America Great Again. A vote for Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, is a vote for the biggest tax hike in history. I've never seen this before. A man is campaigning on the fact that he's going to raise your taxes. I haven't seen. They're going to crush regulations. It will be crushing. You have no idea what they want to do. We took off more regulations than any administration in the history of our country. They are going to put those regulations back, and all they do is cause waste and a lot of other problems. Slash Medicare and Social Security, and they want to abolish American energy. You know what he said? No fracking. He said no fracking. Until he went to Pennsylvania, then he said maybe we can frack. His people won't let him frack, and Joe doesn't have any clue where he is. You know that. Where am I? Where am I? What state am I in? He's only got it wrong about 7 times. Where am I? Is this Arizona or is this Nevada? Where am I? Tell me, where am I? Is this Iowa? Oh, it's very hot. I know where I am. This is Florida, isn't it? No, Joe. No, Joe. A vote for Biden is a vote for open borders, offshoring jobs, shredding the Second Amendment, confiscating your guns, and eliminating private health care. 180 million people on private health care. It's called bye-bye, and they love their private health care.
All right, folks. Well, after the break, we'll take a look at what's breaking on Just the News. We'll also be honoring today's hero. You're watching Actionable Intelligence, and we'll be back with you in just a minute. Hey, welcome back to Actionable Intelligence. Before we go, let's take a look at one of the stories making headlines today at justthenews.com. You can see right here that Editor-in-Chief John Solomon has a powerful report where he breaks down the 7 uncomfortable realities facing Joe Biden as Election Day draws near. First, from the vice president appearing to have a conflict of interest to potential security concerns were he to win the election. You'll find all the details at justthenews.com. Now, as you know, this is a country built by real American heroes, and here on Actionable Intelligence, we honor the men and women who serve on the front lines. Every night we share stories of courage and sacrifice of sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, friends and neighbors. And our story tonight is a story of the sacrifice made by Matthew Axe Axelson. I knew Matt. We were in the same Buds class 237. He was not only a great Navy SEAL, but he was a great friend. On June 28, 2005, Axe sacrificed his own life so that his teammate would survive. It happened on a mission, Operation Red Wings, that is considered by many one of the single hardest days in naval special warfare history. But in the chaos, Axelson proved that he was a true American hero, that nothing, not even multiple gunshot wounds, would keep him from performing his duties. He paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom, and for that sacrifice, he was awarded the Navy Cross. Today, his memory lives on thanks to the efforts of his mother, Donna Axelson, other loved ones, and the Matt Axelson Foundation. And here, we remember Axe and all those who serve and sacrifice on the front lines. God bless you, and have a great night.